welcome back to the Stray Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Hendrickson, and today I have with me again Miss Sandy Dixon, practical astrologer. Pleasure to have you again.
Oh, I love being here.
Today we're going to focus on playing with fire and how to find that in your astrological chart, or have Sandy help you, and how to use it in a productive way because it can be very destructive, I understand.
You understand. Is that personal knowledge, Ashley? Is that what you're saying?
Probably quite a bit.
Well, where would you like to start with me on this? Because I can dive right in and talk about why I'm talking fire, or what do you think?
Yeah, let's talk about why this is the topic today in the first place. And then maybe you can give us a little bit of an idea in terms of, like, we talked about the 4 elements last time, how each of those apply fire, because we do have a little bit of all of that in us, right?
Right. So let's take a look at that first. You know, if anyone listened to that last one where we did break down the 4 elements in a chart, that's fire, air, earth, and water. We're all a mix of those elements, even when a chart doesn't specifically say you have fire. So I've worked with clients who think they know some astrology already, and they'll say, oh no, I'm missing fire. I don't even have it in my chart. I'll say, well, let me talk you through it. Let's see here. And usually I'm finding out many things here. One, it could be, it's true, there's no sign that is a fire sign. That would be Aries, Leo, or Sagittarius. There's no house placement that's fire. That would be 1st, 5, and 9. And there's no planet playing with your big 3, like a Mars or a Jupiter playing with your sun, moon, or rising, that really emphasize fire in your chart. That could be true. And because of that, if I don't see any other connection of fire in there, I would say, lucky you, you were born with all this fire in you already. You know how to use it. So that's not really the focus this lifetime. It's, we got to look at your air and your water and your earth. But more times than not, when a client says, I'm missing fire, I do see it in the chart, and they just never knew how to access it, or it's been nurtured out of them. And that's a really important part, especially women with fire, of how much women have been nurtured out of fire, just because it's so unknown for so many of us how to do it in a healthy way.
Can you talk about the nurturing out piece? Because I think that's something that really resonated with me the first time I heard you say that, and what that means, what that looks like, how that shows up for people.
Definitely. So I can use my own experience with this to show you that I do have fire in my chart that I never knew of until I started looking at my chart. When I would go get readings, no one ever told me that I had fire in my chart per se. And mainly it's because all the other elements really pop forth first in my personality, or so I thought.
Right.
And that Aries that I have so strong inside my chart, Aries is the leader. Aries is this willingness to, like, I call it like the warrior goddess in me, willing to step forward and making sure that everybody else follows at some point, but I'm not really concerned. I just know if I'm doing my job, it'll be there. They'll be there. Right. But as a kid, I didn't have the language for any of that. And I only saw women that had any type of anger issues or any type of loud, too much in their personality. They'd show up just being too exaggerant, too drama filled, or too boisterous in any way. They got labeled by the men in my family. And it was taught really early on that if you showed your anger, if you showed your fire, you were showing you're crazy. And so it was told to me, don't be crazy. Don't be like that person. Don't be like that person. Shut down or be more logical. And they nurtured me into my head. Like, just think more, be more practical. I have that in my chart as well. So I latched onto that really quickly. Like, if that's what's going to get me approval, I'm going to do that. And then didn't understand that I was bearing all these emotions. And that took a long time for me to learn how to nurture myself back into what does healthy fire look like. So if you want to, I can go through the signs and really show like what is that high and low road tendency of these fire things. And maybe listeners will actually see or hear themselves in some of these examples.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Okay, so look, we'll start with Aries. That Aries is that first sign of the zodiac. And
Okay.
it is, because it's first, it's a good representation of what Aries means. To be first, to do the solo, to learn how to do solo in a healthy way. And it's not about saying you have to be alone for the rest of your life. The highest road of Aries is to say, I don't lose myself when I'm involved with a project or helping others or in a relationship. I know how to move out in front and take care of me first before I start taking care of everybody else. That's the healthy side of things. Other healthy Aries pieces are being able to speak up, not just for yourself, but for causes, for other people. To be physical. High road also is the competition in a healthy way. Not competition because you feel that you're judging or comparing yourself to something else or someone else, but just that desire to want to do better. Aries has, in its healthy form, a very strong sense of that, as well as just a strong sense of who they are. Now, the low road of Aries would be narcissistic. It would be having anger issues. But you can also look at the low road as being shy and quiet, not knowing how to speak up. The other low road to Aries, let's see. I would also say if you do start to lose yourself or burning yourself out because you're burning the candle at both ends all the time, that could be part of your fire that's out of control. Let's move to Leo. Leos, I think, are fascinating because we see a lot of performers have Leo in their chart. They don't mind being on stage. They don't mind showing up and being seen. That's a high road. But the low road of that can be they do it to such an excess that they're pushing themselves onto people without reading the room. It's not that they have to contain themselves, but they understand where their fire is most accepted. Leos can get the label of being way too dramatic, overly dramatic. Now, I think every Leo has some drama in them, but that's what also makes life exciting when you're with a Leo, is that they are so expression filled. So they know the highs and the lows of life, and they're not shying away from them. But if everything becomes drama, if everything becomes gossip with the drama, that's probably air and water or air and fire together. That's a low road tendency. Some ways that Leos express themselves, though, like I was dealing with a client this weekend and she said, I'm Leo, but I've never been outgoing. I would never put myself out on stage.
Yeah.
Want to be seen. And there is this secretively shy side of Leos that most people don't recognize. Even those that get up on stage can be secretively shy. But there are Leos that just want to be the director behind the scenes, to control it. It's a fixed sign. So in that fixed modality, it wants to make sure it knows exactly what's going on. They're moving the puppet strings on everything, and they're good at it. They're very good at knowing how to manage or direct others. So which Leo would you be? If you have Leo in your chart, which one are you? Sagittarius. Sagittarius are usually my class clowns, usually the ones that find humor in everything. They have a zest and a joy for life. This constant ability to want to learn on a higher level. So beyond your elementary years, beyond your high school years, Sages are like insatiable of give me more. And the philosophy behind things and the travel and the experience, that's all the stuff that Sag wants. In fact, I like to think of Sagittarius at the high road of it just has such a zest for wanting to explore and experience life on all extremes. So the low road of that is that they have no off button and they have no filter. They can be brutally honest, which honesty could be a high road. But when it's brutally honest where they're not reading the room again, they're putting their foot in their mouth. They're saying things to people that can be very hurtful at the wrong time. And they'll say, well, what? It was the truth. I'm just telling the truth. That would be a low road use of their fire.
Sure.
Not having that off button to know that the overindulging just for the party's sake, just for the joy's sake, just for the fun factor, actually needs to have some boundaries put in there. So those are just the highs and lows. And I hope that maybe you're even seeing some of those things inside yourself and your chart.
Yeah, I mean, I really could identify with both Aries and Leo. Leo is my sun sign.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because I, for most of my life, felt like I wasn't a Leo because I wasn't very like in your face and like, let me just run the room. Although I do have a little bit of that capacity in me if I'm in the right condition or situation or environment, right? And as I've gotten older, a lot of the reservations I think that I had that kept me as like the shy Leo kind of hiding has allowed me to kind of step into where I do feel comfortable being up front and center.
So somebody somewhere along the line helped plant that seed in you of knowing how to nurture the fire, that Leo side of you, in a really healthy way. It's no longer being shy for the sake of, I feel unworthy, or who am I to do such a thing?
Right. The imposter syndrome.
Yes, the imposter syndrome.
That is a real thing for so many people.
It's huge. I think it gets it gets overused, that phrase, in anything from social media to society when you're talking to your friends. But if you've ever felt it, you understand it, that why am I here? Why do I deserve this? Why would she call me? Why would they want to date me? Why would anybody find me attractive? But yet I'm being thrust in this role, whatever that role is, and I have to go for it. And I say that with a question mark because that's usually what imposter syndrome feels like. It's like, really?
Yeah.
Me? Are you sure? And it's just that doubt. And when that doubt comes, how do we get over it? How do we nurture back into that healthy fire? It's not enough to just read a book that says, give yourself an affirmation. You're doing it. You're rocking it. You're boss. You're whatever. That doesn't fill that hole that was either nurtured. That means the fire was nurtured out of you at some point, or that you had such negative experiences. That's what nurtured you out of it. Maybe you did try to put yourself out there and got shut down. Maybe you did get rejected over and over and over again to the point where it hurts so bad, you just close yourself off from it. So do you remember when the switch flipped? You said it's just getting older, but do you know something pivotal that helped nurture that fire back into you?
I don't know, because I think if I go back to when I was little and you didn't have so much, not self-awareness, but kind of self-awareness, right? Like you were just kind of oblivious to what everyone else thought about you. Like I would say I probably had a lot of fire when I was little. And then as you start growing up, right, and you start hearing feedback from other people, peers and coaches and teachers and later relationships and family or whatever it is, whoever is giving you that input, right, starts to make you question and kind of pull back a little bit or self-reflect more or become more self-conscious, not self-aware. That's what I was looking for, right? And so I think that's part of growing up is starting to then figure out which external beliefs or statements become beliefs for you. What are you internalizing, right? And starting to do a lot more self-assessment. And so I think for me, a lot of it has been like my journey into meditation and really inquiry, what is true? What are these beliefs that I'm carrying around with me that have formed my identity that I have been so attached to my whole life? And who gave them to me? When did I accept them? So there was a lot of personal growth work, I think, that played into that. And then, it was finding, I think, my passion and getting feedback that I do know what I'm doing. I do know what I'm talking about, right? And so that reinforcement, that positive reinforcement that came from external sources, I think kind of bolstered it a little bit. But most of it, I would say, it was due to a lot of personal growth work that I've been doing for a really long time.
Right. And everything you just described, Ashley, every single bit of it describes all the journey through the fire signs. So you went into this personal growth mode. You did this deep inquiry. That is that higher learning of Sagittarius. That is about saying, I'm not satisfied with just this. I want to learn more. I want to understand how to experience this at a different perspective, a different way. You talked about getting that worthiness, then that confirmation that, okay, this is me and this is how I can use it.
Right.
And that's that Leo part of really understanding that you deserve to be here. You do have worth. Your voice does matter. And then you talked about passion, and passion is all the way through the fire signs. I remember a time in my life, I'll say it this way. There was a period in my late 30s to mid 40s where I kept hearing, know what your passion is, follow your passion, follow your bliss, all these things. And I thought that sounded wonderful. And I had no idea what I was supposed to do. And I would make these lists and I would try to figure out, I would talk to people. And I was even talking to my therapist long ago about it. And it just kept hitting like this dead end. People would say, or books would tell me, or podcasts would say, you'll know it when you come across it. Like, that doesn't help me. I don't understand. How do I find this passion? Now, when I work with clients, I start off before the passion. I try not to use the passion word unless I already know something lights them up.
Yeah.
If something immediately lights them up and they're talking a lot about their kids or their pets or this service project that they're doing or something, I know I got something to start cultivating more of that fire. But when I'm hearing more of this, I don't know, the self-doubt, directionless type of thing, fire usually has direction. It's usually like, oh, we're going, we're here, we were present. So I start with, how do you just cultivate fire in your routine every day? And the first thing that starts is your breath. We can't escape our breathing. So fire is with us all the time. And we can start using, like in yoga, we call it pranayama, breath practices.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not in yoga or you don't follow a pranayama practice, you can just do deep breathing and feel how that's already warming the body. It's generating enough heat to start regulating systems. Now we're ready. We're going to be going through the day. And so the next thing would be getting some physical movement in. And most of the time my clients will say, but I hate exercising. I don't want to do it. Or I can't seem to stay motivated with it. Okay, well then let's start adding it in a fun way of throw on some music, dance for 3 minutes, hop around. If you have kids, start playing with your kids. If you like doing projects, go find a service project that requires you to move and physically sweat while you're doing it, especially community projects. I used to work with the Forest Preserve or volunteer with the Forest Preserve. Those are great ways to get that fire going. But say you are a person, and Ashley, you might be one of these people that working out for you is a non-negotiable. You're always going to do it.
Right. It's not good for me if I'm not working out. And that's probably got a lot to do with, I think I have a lot of fire in my chart. I can't remember exactly my whole chart, but I have to go back now and look to see how much Aries I have, because that was like lighting up all these bells in my head. But yeah, I need it. I need to move, and I feel best when I'm doing really intense workouts.
Really intense. And I remember during one of our readings together, we talked about when you get to such an intensity and such a competitiveness within yourself of like, okay, I got to do this. This is non-negotiable.
Right.
and the fun factor is gone. And soon that starts to take on its own heat of burning you up on the inside as well.
Mhm.
It's, I'm not saying if you're a professional athlete that you have to always make it a fun factor. If you're a professional athlete, that's your job.
Right.
You're going to find a purpose, and purpose and passion usually go hand in hand of why you're doing it. But for those of us that are just exercising for our better health, but yet we find ourselves pushing so hard,
Right.
that fire is probably cranked up a few notches too high. And again, I can't say this for a blanket statement about everybody. I'd have to listen to the story and find out what's the balance that will work for you that still allows that fire to propel other good things in your life to happen. That's what we want to use our fire for. We don't want to use it just for one little section of the day when we work out for that 1 hour.
Right.
And then we go, okay, so now I'm set for the day. I'm fine. Like, wait, how do we keep using that wonderful passion? And if you can't work out because of illness or scheduling or such, does that mean you don't have fire anymore? Does that mean you're going to be off for the whole day? I don't think so. I think there's other ways that we can use fire. And that's when I look at your chart and say, oh, let's incorporate some of this, like singing. Do you sing at all to yourself out loud?
I love music, but I don't, I sing in the car.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's where most of us sing, the shower and the car, right?
Yeah.
So that's a way to bring fire into your life, especially for those people that say, I don't like exercise. Well, have you tried singing? I'm not saying it's going to replace exercise for physical sake. It's going to help you with your fire. As you start to use your voice and you actually hear, whether you're tone deaf or not,
right,
that your voice matters.
Yeah. A couple of things you said were really interesting, and I just want to touch on them because from like the functional medicine perspective in my protocol, when we talk about exercise, a lot of times what I'm doing is trying to re-educate on why we're doing it, right? Because so many times you're doing it as a form of punishment for a lot of women. But what you said that really resonated with me is that with this fire where you're so competitive, which is just, it's innately built into me. I don't even know how to turn it off. I'm like all or nothing all the time, like flooring the gas pedal, right? Mm-hmm. But saying that this external fire of working out so hard can create internal fire. And then I think about when I'm teaching this, like how to start to tap into what your body really needs is paying attention to how exhausted you're feeling after your workouts. And why this is so important for me to share is because when we create that much stress in our physical body, right, where we're not listening and we're overtraining or too intense all the time for too long, we're creating so much stress and inflammation in the body, which is
fire.
Yeah. And so the parallels when I talk to you are just so, it's all the time, like just blows my mind how spot on they are, right? With my personal experience, that was my experience. You know, I ended up with an autoimmune condition. I was training way, way, way too hard all the time, super intense, like 7 days a week, sometimes twice, right? Running marathons. I mean, you know, it was crazy.
So if you were working with me on a regular basis and I'm looking at your chart, I would say, Ashley, what are you running from? What are you trying to compete to what level for what reason?
Right.
Back to your point of purpose, right? We find that purpose in there, but there's probably a deeper underlying condition here, which goes back to using the voice and being heard in a way, not just by yourself, but by those around you, that is worthwhile. I think somewhere in most of women's lives, we've been told somehow that it's quiet down, or that's not necessary, or you're being too much. And we need to look for those role models of our life, other women particularly, that know how to use their fire in a very healthy way. And you'll know it when you come across those women because you feel so empowered. Their fire ignites something in you. It doesn't drive you to be more competitive. It doesn't drive you to burn yourself out or start judging yourself. It's that you listen or hang out with these women and you feel so good about yourself. You suddenly feel like, I can do this. I'm ready for this. And fire goes a long way for being that igniter of passion in other people as well, not just yourself.
Yeah. And I think that's when my fire burns the brightest, is when I see other people light up, right? When something that I say resonates, or they have like an aha moment, or they just have this type of realization where they do start to feel empowered, which is the whole purpose of what we're doing here, right? Is education and empowerment. That is the foundation, the cornerstone of why we're talking and sharing this information with people. So again, like totally resonates.
But now let's talk about that fact of one of the hardest ones I know for you that we talked about before was finding the fun factor.
That is hard. Yeah. Being silly
Not
is
the only
really
one.
hard.
Yeah, you're not the only one. When I give people some directives to take away from the reading and I say, okay, try this, and I get this silence and I have to check back in and go, wait a minute, where do you have fun? Right? And that's the first question everyone should ask themselves, because whether you are working on fire particularly or not, asking that question really starts tapping into your value system and such, where you can say, am I doing something that I can find joy in, that will make me laugh, that I can share that joy with others as well, not just myself. So I would first say, ask the question, where do you find your fun? And two, is it healthy fun? Because some people will say, oh yeah, my girlfriends and I, we drink a bottle of wine every night. And like, well, okay. And how is that serving you? Well, they're getting the camaraderie with friendship, right? They just don't have the healthy boundary around it, because they're using the alcohol as the igniter instead of the connection with friends as the igniter. That's the passion. That's the piece you really want. So that's the first question. The second question then to ask yourself is, where can I put more fun into my day? And possibly, this is where it goes back to Leo, is to start acting like a kid again. Where can you remember in your life, or how can you remember in your life times that you just got lost in play? Play for me, when I was younger, I was such an imaginative kid. So I remember getting lost in fun when I was setting up my stuffed animals and creating like the animal hospital, or I created school for all my stuffed animals. And then that turned into school with all my friends. And
Yeah.
I was very always looking for heady type of projects, but they were fun for me. And I look back at those times and think, what do they all have in common? And what they had in common was, I liked being with people, and I liked the organization of things. That is fun for me, as long as I keep it in a balance. Learning was always fun for me. I could get lost in books and just have such a wonderful time. I'd be laughing in a book, crying with a book, so many emotions. So I bring that into my life. That's where I would go. So I'd ask you, like, when you were a kid, do you remember anything that you got swept up in?
Books for sure. I was a big reader when I was a kid, and same, like I would have the whole gamut of emotions depending on what was happening with the characters. Like I was in the book. I used to make up like dance routines with my friends a lot, and I love I love music and I love dancing, but I also remember like adventuring. So where I grew up, we had like this big ravine. The backyard was like basically wooded for most of it, and then there was this creek that ran through, and we would go down there and we were like looking for arrowheads and old artifacts, and exploring everything and climbing into the big viaducts or whatever they were. And we found this little house that was really just a neighbor's like playhouse, but we didn't know it was there, you know? Um, that kind of stuff was,
The Sagittarius part of your chart. We gotta look back at your chart again because I think there's a lot of ninth house, which is the Sag house, activity, or Jupiter's impacting a lot of things that are making you feel like that adventure, that
yeah,
explore.
the excitement, right? Like I will get lost, the idea of adventuring and exploring and discovering and learning. So a lot of the things that you talked about, like I said, really resonated with me, where I can see those characteristics or personality traits in myself, both unfortunately high and low road, right? But working on getting to the high road most of the time.
Right. And I think that's the first step, is to know whenever we learn a new dance step in our life, whether we're trying to cultivate more fire or another element, it's going to be awkward at first. And there's going to be a lot of low road stepping.
Yeah.
It's okay. As long as we stay aware and we're checking in and assessing, like, okay, how did this work? What worked? Instead of going straight to the critical of, I did that wrong or I made a mistake.
Yeah.
If there's anything that we can really take from the high road of fire, is they don't care. If they make a mistake, they just keep on going. They're like, okay, check that up. Let's try it again. Because they have the courage. Courage is another big word for fire.
Mm-hmm.
So if you feel you're lacking courage, instead of trying to say to yourself, okay, this is my goal, I'm going to have more courage, I'm going to be more courageous this month. What does that mean? How in the world can you possibly just pick that huge word to start with? I would start at a much easy level. Break down the dance step again. Where can we just
something that scares you just a little bit, right?
Exactly.
I mean, that's what I would say if I was coaching someone who was looking to be more courageous or brave, is what's something that seems a little scary to you? Going to a movie by yourself? Is that awkward and uncomfortable?
That could be, but that could be also, my mentor always calls it like climbing the mountain. And here we are. If courage is at the top of the mountain and down here is you have no courage whatsoever, what little steps can you take to get to the big courage in your life? And I would say what you just said there, like going to a movie by yourself, might be midway up the mountain. So maybe
I don't know.
We might, right? For some people, it might.
Sure.
Scare the jeepers out of them and be like so uncomfortable, and anxiety starts to happen. Well, let's not go there. Let's start smaller. Let's first find out.
What would you use as an example?
Try a new food. Right? Sit at a different place at the table that you always, or work someplace else. I know that sounds not fire-ish, but it's your first dance step to go, oh, this wasn't so bad.
Right.
Okay. Now what's the next thing? Making a phone call might not be a hard thing for some, but others, it sends their anxiety up the wall.
Sure.
So how about a text? You know, like, can you text somebody for the first time to ask a question or just say hello?
So perspective is so interesting. It must be all the fire in me, because I'm like, going to the movies would be a baby step. For me, it'd be like going to Europe would be like halfway up the mountain for a week by myself, backpacking or something. You know?
I think that's so beautiful that you recognize that, because when, as practitioners, or just, I'll just say anybody, right? If we're coming only from our perspective, then we look at somebody who doesn't have that ability and we go, come on, it's not that hard. You and I are both very motivated to get up and exercise every day.
Right.
So it's not that hard for us. Right. But when you've ever thought of something that's really hard for you and kind of turn the tables on yourself of, that's how that person feels about exercise.
Yeah. And that took me a little while to learn as a health coach, because for me, like I said, I'm an all or nothing. So when somebody comes at me with a healing diet that's super strict, I'm like, great, I have the rules. I got it. You know, I will let all the things go because healing was my goal. Right. And whatever I have to do, I'm going to do it. And then that's just not the case for so many people. And it really becomes a dance of the client leads.
Yeah. I'll give you the one that's so hard for me, even though I have fire in my chart, is anger. For the longest time, anger was my trigger. If someone said, you sound angry, and I I didn't feel I felt angry or expressing anger, I was shut down. And so my cue for any time that that emotion that was so foreign to me because it had been nurtured out of me, any hint of it, my body just shut down.
Mm-hmm.
As I got older and I realized, oh, that's the reaction. So if I'm shutting down, it means there's anger there.
Hmm.
And how can I explore that? And in the moment, I might not be able to, right? That's already way beyond half up the mountain. That's going blowing past it. So I had to start with simple things like singing or yelling. I remember going on a vacation where there was this mountain range. I got to the top of it, nobody was around, and I just screamed out into the nothing.
Yeah.
And I kept doing it. And then I changed it into phrases like I am enough or I am worthy. And it sounded corny at the time. I actually felt so stupid for doing it. I'm at the top of the mountain. Like, if anybody is watching me right now, this is so embarrassing. And that was another clue to me that it's been nurtured out. Why can't I use my voice? Nobody's around. Why
Right.
is this such a difficult thing? So I had to take it in those steps of learning that my voice, first of all, is safe and it's not hurting anybody in that way that I thought it was hurting people.
Sure.
Then as I'm getting older and I'm working more and more and more through this, I'm finding the safest people in my life that I can fall out with and be angry with and know that the consequence is not going to be that they're going to leave
Mm-hmm.
or that some dastardly thing is going to happen or they're going to label me as crazy and that I did it wrong. So I now find those people and I
Right.
still find myself very apologetic. Like I'll be in the emotion. I'm like, I'm so angry right now, but I'm just going to apologize ahead of time, Ashley, because I'm going to like unload right now. Like my best friends are going, Sandy, stop apologizing. Just say it. So that's my next practice. Watch when I'm apologizing for my anger,
Sure.
when I know I'm with my safe people.
Mm-hmm.
The apology, of course, is needed if you've inadvertently, unintentionally hurt somebody. But just anger itself is an emotion. It's an energy that needs to run through. And if it doesn't, it turns inward and either will over-exercise or will get moody or will overeat. We'll replace it with something because it hurts too much to have all that fire burning inside of us with
Mm-hmm.
no outlet for it.
Yeah.
Highest order fire is just you're loud, you're angry, and you move on, and you didn't burn down anybody. You didn't insult anybody in the process. You
Right.
didn't try to hurt.
Yeah. And I think anger is something that's hard for a lot of people, right? How do you do that in a healthy way? Anyway, right? That's I think probably a challenge. For me, I know for sure it is, right? Like,
What does anger look like healthy, right? And that's another question that is a person to person basis because yes, I think when you're in time and place of a business meeting, it may not be time and place to get up and just scream your passionate piece on something,
right.
right? However, if you don't express the seriousness of the passion that's inside of you, you know that point has to come across. It's only going to fester longer. So doing the practices like meditation and deep breathing and journaling or exercising, anything that your body needs and your mind needs to prepare yourself for that possibly tense, anger-filled moment will help in that situation. But if we
Sure.
always come in with logic, and logic only, then we're defeating and deflating or stifling the fire within us. Because fire
Yep.
doesn't want to go to the head. It wants to stay in that heart, emotional, body feeling sense.
I can definitely relate to that. You know, I am a very logical, analytical, mind-based person, where, you know, I can rationalize all sorts of things and make things I like to make things make sense. I like to understand. I love science. Like that works for me. It makes lifing easier. I've been using that term a lot, lifing.
Right?
Um,
I like it.
but when I feel like I cannot express my emotions or I'm trying to express them and they're being, either dismissed or not heard or not acknowledged, and I'm being redirected to use my logical mind in a moment that seems like it requires emotion, I feel stifled is a good word, but I feel like I'm getting I'm suffocated. I'm like shoved into this box and I'm trapped. And that makes it so much worse, right? That whatever happens, and then the eruption comes, and then there's sometimes no coming back from those kinds of things, right? Because so much of it gets stuffed that it keeps building and building and building. And now there you go. It's like,
well, you said a lot of things. I'm going to unpack a few of them there. We'll start with the last one when you said there's no coming back from that type of anger, that type of explosion.
Yeah.
You can always come back. You can always. It's going to take a lot more work now because you burnt everything. Think of it like a volcano.
Yeah.
It has fried everything to a
fire, maybe.
But then what comes from after a fire out of the ashes? New growth, right? It can happen, but it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of work, a lot of effort. Yeah. So another thing that you said in there is when you feel stifled, let's go there, right? There's so many of us can relate to that where we're in the moment and we feel that our voice and our fire has gotten stifled. Well, then what do we do? If we can't in that very moment speak up and use our voice for ourselves, then if that conversation ends or that fight ends or whatever that moment is, we have to be able to regroup with ourselves afterwards and do something to get that energy off. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking back to certain arguments in my family's life when I was growing up, where I was the receiver of all the heat, all the fire was being just, and again, that was that unhealthy version. Mm-hmm. I had no response. I had no voice, and I had no advocacy for myself. So I'm little, I go in my room, and the best thing I could have done for myself is go out and play. The best thing I could do was physically move to get it out of me, but I didn't all the time. I would go internal and then think somehow I deserved all of that, even if it wasn't mine. Mm-hmm. So I suggest to people that are listening, if you get that stifled moment and you are not in a position that you get to automatically speak up for yourself, you need to go and get that energy off of you and through you. Yeah. Go scream, go sing, go dance, go exercise, physically sweat. And then the body can start to recalibrate with the mind and say, all right, are we ready to use our voice? Now, is it a situation you can go back to that person and say, I like to revisit that, right? Those moments really stirred up a lot of fire inside of me. And I want to be able to share what I feel was happening and whatever. Let the conversation unfold. Or does it have to be in a letter form? Or does it have to go to talk therapy or some sort of counselor therapist that can help you unpack that and work through that anger? Because I don't know about you, but there's people in my life that are no longer with us that I still have fiery feelings about and anger about. And I can't bring that person back to life and do all that. So I have to find other ways to
work through that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that's true for so many people, you know, that you cannot go back and reconcile with whoever or whatever created this sort of anger in you, right? So it's important to start to learn different techniques on how to work through a lot of that, which, you know, is why we look so much at emotional, mental health and well-being as part of a healing process. It's very, very crucial to physical body healing, right? So we're moving in pretty soon to Aries season, right? That happens towards the end of the month. Do you want to give us just a little bit of an overview of what that means? Because I have no idea myself, and maybe a lot of people listening don't know either. Okay. And let us in on all the secrets we need to know.
Let's see. So Aries season 2023 is March 20th through April 20th. Okay. So we've got, and that doesn't always happen where it's the 20th and the 20th, but in this case it is. And so you have a full month to practice support with your fire. It's an ideal time. Aries being the first sign of the zodiac, it's like a fresh start. So I like you to think first and foremost, if you've set any intentions or any goals at the beginning of the year, any projects that you thought I'm going to get done this year, and you felt like things were sliding off or you were negating your steps there, this is your chance to restart. Aries season is a new beginning. And if you haven't had any of those, I encourage you to say, what in your life do you want to make a change with?
Mhm.
Because this initial fire is going to help get things moving. We're going to stoke the fire, get active, and say what needs to be cleaned out, what needs to be, not that you're going to do the cleaning right now, you're getting inspired. You're
Sure.
getting the motivation to move forward with action. You might even develop the action plan. Or you might have been already planning for a long time, and now is the time to take the steps during Aries season. So that's how I use the Aries season with people, particularly for your chart or anybody listening. You'd have to get a reading so that I can show you exactly how to use this
Yeah.
Aries energy.
And I would really encourage anyone who's listening to call Sandy and learn more about your chart. Like I said last time we talked, for those of you who maybe did not hear that episode, you can go back and watch it. But she has this amazing ability to just take your birth date, where you were born and what time, and give you so much insight to how you operate and how you move through life. It is literally mind-blowing. I couldn't it was I still don't even have words for it. How much you know me. It's crazy.
You're seen, right?
So
You're very seen
yeah,
after.
but with zero information. So for anyone who thinks like, oh, astrology, what is that anyway? Right? I mean, I had only talked to Sandy for maybe 5 minutes, and not even one-on-one, in a group setting. I decided to reach out because I was curious. I'm always looking for all of the modalities I can to help people along their healing journey. And some of them are very unique and things that we don't see in mainstream and don't know a lot about. And so I reached out to explore a little bit. There's part of my chart coming out, I guess. And I I still don't have words for how accurately you were able to know me based on no information, really, right? None
I
of my personal
love it.
history, none of and nothing. It's fascinating, and so I'm like, I'm all in now, like trying to figure it all out.
Thank you.
Um,
And Ashley, I so appreciate that because I think many people who know nothing about astrology like you've just given this testimony of it's something and you're going to
it
want to
really
feel it.
is.
And if you want any part of developing in your personal growth, astrology is a wonderful tool to get into that. I'm also going to address those people that feel that they know their chart already. Either they've had readings or they just dabble in it because they look online. And
Right.
nowadays you can find everything online about your chart in bits and pieces. But the beauty of bringing it all together in one reading is phenomenal. I mean, I'm telling you, I've been in this for so many years, and still when I look at my chart with my mentor, something new will pop out. And it's not like, oh, I never knew I had that planet there. I mean, I have that information down. It's how do I apply it? What's the practical sense of applying this chart in my life and in my personal growth? So
Yeah,
I feel both sides.
the perspective that you can give through the information, the way that you share it, is like nothing else I've ever experienced, really.
Thank you.
Like you can start to see like, and I think you said this when I first listened to you speak. It's like, oh, that's why that keeps showing up. That's why that's my pattern. That makes so much sense now,
Hmm.
right? And then you learn that that's part of who you are, and there are tools to help you get from what maybe you identifying with the low road, because that's where our struggles and problems and challenges show up, to how to navigate to the high road, right?
Exactly.
So that you are in alignment and you're grounded and you're using your strengths and very aware of your weaknesses so that you can grow and develop and all of the things that we're here to do. That's what life is, in my opinion, right? Learn, grow, heal, develop,
And
do
we're
it all
all
over again.
and we're all doing it on our own timetable.
Right.
That's the other
Right.
thing. It's not about if I'm 53 years old, I should be here by now in my life. No, it's the zodiac signs are always moving through our life and kind of helping us wake up to just this new little piece of information we need at that moment to do whatever we need to do at that moment with it. So right now we're talking fire. So maybe many of you listening will say, yes, I needed this today. I needed to remember where the fire is in my own chart. Or even if you don't want to get an astrology reading, how do you use fire in general?
Right.
And
Can you
bring
recognize
that,
that in
cultivate
yourself?
that. Because again, if we're every sign, and that's my belief that we are every sign to some extent, we have them in us to a certain unique blueprint of it. And then we have all four elements. Whether it's showing up in your chart or not, we have all four elements in us. Just some are softened, some are more exaggerant. And it's always a good reminder to hear it again of, well, do I have the volume too high on my fire? Just right? Or way too low?
Well, and I think I have one thought and then a question, and we'll see where we go from there. But I'm curious, I guess, I think if you are someone who has a lot of fire, who has kept it stifled, when you start to let it out, it might do that wildfire thing. Like you don't really know how to play with it safely and control it and keep it focused. And so that's just maybe an observation and thought I had. But my second, you can comment on that too. But my question would be, what is the most skeptic sign?
Oh,
Who's someone who's least likely to be open to
well,
things?
again, it all depends. I will say that skepticism comes with earth signs because they're heady, particularly like a Capricorn. Um, they know it already, so they're going to be a little bit more skeptical about this whole astrology thing. Scorpios sometimes can be very skeptical because they're always looking to see is this BS or not.
Uh-huh.
But then I have to say that even in the fire signs, because not so much I would say Leo. I haven't met a lot of Leo skeptics, but when there's a lot of Sagittarius in them or a lot of Aries in them, uh, they may come across like they know it already. I've been doing it. I
Right.
don't need even though Sag loves to study and learn more, there could be a healthy skepticism on prove it to me. Let me
Sure.
experience this. Let me test this out and then I'll know. So if you do have that in your chart, test it out, get a reading or look into it more.
Well, that was my whole motivation for the question is I was going to challenge anyone who is in that space after March 20th, when it's time for a fresh start, maybe get a little out of your comfort zone. And if you're skeptical about what Sandy and I are talking about, come see for yourself. Give her
Yeah,
a call. Find somebody else who does it if you don't like Sandy.
exactly.
But Sandy is, I mean, just such a gift. The way that you work with people is just so special.
Thank
So
you.
I would say call Sandy.
But it's true, just like any healing modality, it's you find the person that you resonate with. And if
Right.
I'm not your person, I can find you your person with you if you need advice. If
Yeah.
you meet me and we're like, hey, wait, this isn't quite jiving, I've got tons of astrologers in my repertoire. So I can say, why don't you check out this person or this person? They'll
Yeah.
resonate with you.
Yeah.
And vice versa. I think that once you get a reading done like this, to bring it back to Ashley, if you're working with Ashley already, this is the type of information you can bring to her and say, I got my chart read and I'm learning so much about this and this, like the fire aspect.
Right.
And then Ashley can start opening all sorts of doors for you on, okay, let's.
How do we apply these changes in our physical approach to wellness based on your strengths?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe some of the roadblocks that we're running into are based on the low road behaviors, right? And I would say absolutely bring it if you're in therapy.
Yeah, definitely.
Right?
Definitely.
Because you work pretty closely with the team at Taurus, I believe, Jamie.
And any therapist, right?
Yeah.
So you can bring it to them. If they don't believe in astrology, you can just use astrological terms like I do in my sessions. I'm really trying to make it just practical language and bring
Which
that
you're great at too, is practically applying the information so that the people will have the language to go and share it with someone who may not buy into the astrology piece.
Right.
So such a pleasure, always is. I thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and your knowledge. Remind people how they can reach you, please.
Sure. You can look at my website at www.sandy-dixon.com or check me out on Instagram, Sandy Gee Dixon. That's Gee Dixon.
Yes. And she's had lots of really great tips and videos coming out lately. So if you're not following her, you definitely should get over to Instagram and do that today. But thank you so much again for your time. I look forward to our next conversation. Stay tuned if you enjoy listening to Sandy and I chat about this as much as I enjoy listening to her share her knowledge. She will be back for a few more episodes at least in the coming months. So,
and actually, one of the things I'm going to throw out there, because if people resonate with it, we should try to bring somebody on with their chart and with a specific issue. So just a food for thought. We can look at it and see how we can bring real life examples in with someone's chart and start showing some really cool pieces.
We definitely can do that. And at the same time, if there's anything that you all would like to have addressed with Sandy from this perspective, or you have any questions you would like answered, please send them over to info@shreywellness.com, and we will do our best to address any of those curiosities that you may have. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for being here, Sandy, and we'll see you all soon. Have a good day.